This is the first MacBook Pro in a very long time that deserves the Pro name. First up, with the new MacBook Pros, let's talk about design. The new design is actually not that much different from the old one, and I am a big fan of it. They made it a little bit chunkier. It looks thicker, but it isn't actually thicker than the old ones. The old ones kind of just taper more at the edge here, so they seem slimmer than they really are. There's also a few other design changes. Most notably the screen. The screen has a new notch design, which some people hate, and they actually use apps to cover up, but I myself like, because the notch doesn't really get in the way. It covers up a section of your taskbar that you're not using anyway. So for me, it's really not that big of a deal. But I actually like the new refresh compared to the old one. The addition of the SD card and the black inlay for the keyboard just make it feel like a new computer. And then let's not forget that notch. Speaking of the notch is actually attached to a brand new screen, which Apple calls their Retina XDR display. This is the same technology that's in their $5,000 XDR display, but just in a smaller size. And to be honest with you, this screen looks amazing. Compared to the old 2019 MacBook Pro, the contrast levels on this screen are so much better. And with the fact that it's HDR, the blacks are truly black, and you can really see the difference between the old one and the new one. The colors are very accurate and nice and vibrant, and this thing is just a pleasure to look at. I've actually found myself using the laptop more just with the screen instead of connecting it to the monitor, because I love looking at this display so much. They also revised Touch ID on this new computer, and it feels a lot better than the old one. So let's talk about performance for a little bit. I think that's the biggest upgrade in these new computers that really justifies the Pro name again. So compared to the 2019 computer, the new M1 Max and M1 Pro models really outperform the previous laptops. I mean, the benchmarks are insane. I ran a few tests with Geekbench, and the CPU scores were very impressive. So a laptop performs just as good in CPU benchmarks as my desktop computer, which in my eyes is absolutely insane. Now, the one area where the MacBook does fall a little short is in the GPU score. I exported the same minute-long project that had heavy motion graphics and video built in. The old 2019 MacBook Pro exported the project in 3 minutes and 44 seconds. My PC exported that project in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And surprisingly, the M1 Max computer exported that same project in 2 minutes and 23 seconds, which is only 3 seconds longer than the PC. When it comes to Premiere, you can see that those GPU scores really don't matter that much, but they do factor in a little bit more into programs that use GPU acceleration like DaVinci. For the time that I've been using the 16-inch M1 Max computer, I've moved all of my creative work away from my PC and onto the Mac. And to be honest with you, I haven't really noticed that many shortcomings with the MacBook. To say I was impressed with the new MacBook Pro is an understatement. I'm actually very surprised at how efficient this laptop is for any kind of creative work. I didn't do any tests in Photoshop and Lightroom, but they run perfectly fine. As we know, Premiere on the new MacBook Pro runs like a dream, whereas on the old one, I would constantly run into issues, whether it be it took very long to open up, it would crash with random actions, it would have a hard time loading footage, and the fans would constantly spin up on that one. With the new MacBook Pro, the M1 Max, I don't hear the fans that often, which is pretty nice. So let's just talk about battery life real quick. Battery life on the M1 Max is pretty impressive. but it really depends on what type of task you're doing with it. If you're just online, browsing videos, listening to music, the battery will last you all day. While I was editing, I did a test where I edited for an hour and saw how much the battery dropped, and it dropped about 20%. So theoretically, you could get 5 to 6 hours of editing time on a single charge, which is actually a huge advantage over the old 2019 MacBook Pro, where I found that when I was editing, I would only get like a couple hours of battery life, and it also slowed down the computer quite a bit when it wasn't plugged in to the charger because it wouldn't let you fully utilize the CPU on battery. The 2021 MacBook Pro M1 Max is miles ahead of the previous 2019 MacBook Pro that ran on the Intel chips. This is the first laptop in a while from Apple that actually deserves the Pro name and the price tag that comes with it.